Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Mathspace Academy for Year 11 students. My name's Andrew, and I'm the head of content here at Mathspace. That means that if you are doing a question in Mathspace, looking at a lesson, looking at an image, anything that you see in Mathspace that involves maths questions or maths explanations or even the hints are put together by my team and I. We work very hard on trying to make sure that every question is as good as it can be. And we also read every piece of your feedback. So make sure you keep that coming as well. This class targets or looks at the New South Wales textbook for Year 11 and 12. You might not know this, but different states across Australia have slightly different things that they cover in Year 11 and 12. Everything I cover today is going to be something that may come up regardless of what state you're in. Sometime later, we might start to wander into areas that are just for New South Wales, and I'll be looking at the New South Wales textbook. But if you're not in New South Wales, don't worry, you should still be able to learn something. Everything I'm going to show you today is going to make a lot more sense if you're logged into Mathspace, and I'll show you around what it should look like and how I think you can make a good use of your time while we're all stuck inside using Mathspace. Also, if you missed last week, you can take a look at the recording of that lesson, and I'll show you how to get there now. So if you go to mathspace.co/au/academy, you will land on a page that looks like this. And that's me pre-beard and some of the other teachers at the Academy. If you click on Year 11, you'll see this is the lesson that we're doing right now, budgeting your household expenses. You can see the upcoming lessons, and you've also got the recording, Lesson 1, Formulas and Equations. So you can go back and watch that if you want to brush up on some of the skills that you're going to need for formulas and equations. Just to reiterate though, mathspace.co/au/academy. It's not .com, it's .co. Okay. So a couple of things that are more Zoom related. I can see that one attendee has already discovered the chat feature. I do have the chat up here on the screen, and I'll sort of let it scroll by. I won't be paying too much attention to it. If you do want to ask me a question, then the best way is to use the Q&A feature. At the bottom of the Zoom call, there's a little symbol that looks like two little chat bubbles, and it says Q&A. If you ask a question there, it will flash up and I'll see it and I will be able to answer it for everybody. So whether you're a student or a teacher, if you see something and you'd like me to go into a bit more detail, if you think something that I've said is confusing or you really want me to do some particular thing, then hit me up in the questions and answers. Okay, so with the introduction out of the way, let's show you the student view. Here we are. This is me logged in on my student account in Mathspace. Bowie Dinosaur avatar is best avatar. You might have a different, less good avatar. That's okay, I guess. And this is what we call the dashboard. It's the first page you see when you log into Mathspace. And up here, you'll see if your teacher's assigned you any work, the work will come through here. They might assign you lessons. We've got recommendations and STEM stories. But I think if you're doing work on your own, the best place to do that is in a place called the topics page. So I'm just going to click into the topics page here. The important thing about the topics page is that it's going to show you all the work that you've done in a particular area and how close you are to mastering all the mathematics content in your course. So to start with, if you click on the topics page, make sure that the textbook that comes up is the relevant one for you in your year. So because this is for year 11, I've got the New South Wales Maths Standard 11 textbook selected. If I didn't have this textbook collected, I click on this and I can go, Australia, New South Wales Standard 11, and make sure that I've got the same topic areas as you do. Okay, so last time we looked at formulas and equations, and today we're going to be looking at budgeting and household expenses. When you click into a topic, you'll see a bunch of questions, a bunch of subtopics. The questions you have to click in to see them. If you've done any work, they'll appear here on the scorecard. There's the question set if you want to look for a particular question. There's a lesson, and I'm actually going to be looking through the lessons to start with. And then if you're ready, you can jump in and practice. It's a really good idea to jump in and practice and just see where you're at. Maybe you've already got some progress across some of these bars. If you can push all of these bars to the top, then the bar over here on the left will be pushed all the way to the top. And if you can do that for every single bar over here on the left, then you will have mastered everything you need to know for year 11 in your course, and you can be ready for year 12. I just saw something come up in the Q&A. Someone's asked for the class code. So there isn't actually a class code for the Academy. I'm not assigning you any work. Let me see what So I'm not assigning any work to anyone. Whatever code you have to join, you can join yourself. If you don't have a code, if you don't have a Mathspace account, then the best thing to do is to ask your teacher, and your teacher will be able to get you into Mathspace. Generally speaking, we just expect that you will be doing the work that your teacher assigns you, but if you don't have any work assigned to you, or you want to do the kind of work that we're talking about today, then the topics page is the best place to go. Okay. So what I'm going to spend most of my time looking at is the textbook part. The textbook part is very similar to the topics part of Mathspace, but any work you do in the textbook doesn't count. It doesn't push up these bars and give you mastery over each of the levels, each of the subtopics. So when you're doing your own work and you're ready to test your mettle and see if you've covered all the skills, do it in the topics page. But I'm actually going to be looking in the textbook, and I'm going to be looking in the teacher view. So if you've never seen the teacher view, you're about to see it. Okay. So I'll just show you the textbook view from the student point of view first and show you the difference. The textbook is meant to look a lot like a physical textbook if you have a print physical textbook. It's got a similar idea. You click up here to select. Now, I've got a lot of textbooks. We look after a lot of textbooks that here in Mathspace, you won't have nearly as many textbooks as me, but we do have a lot. So let me just find New South Wales Maths Standard 11. There I go. And you'll see it's got the same words over here. And if I go into budgeting and household expenses, the difference here, I can still start an adaptive task from here, but I'll get to see all of the questions that are in the set. There's a lot of questions, and we'll be doing some of them today as we're doing some revision on this area. And I can also access the lesson by clicking through here. All right. There's been another question in Q&A, which is about the people who signed up through Westpac. I'm actually not the best person to ask. I'm the head of content here at Mathspace, but I believe that people who sign up through Westpac do. There is something. I tell you what, how about I delay answering that question until the end, and I'll see if I can get an answer for you. I think that there is a way for us to accommodate people who sign up through Westpac. I'm not 100% sure though. I'll also apologize for my quite noisy coworker. I've got my young child is here at home with me, which makes working from home a bit of a challenge sometimes. So I do apologize if you hear his any noises from him coming through. Okay. So this is my student view. I'm going to switch across to the teacher view. So the teacher view looks very similar to the view that you'll see on the student view. And I'm just going to zoom in so we can see a little bit better. So as I mentioned, today what we're talking about is budgeting and household expenses. Generally speaking, when people think about mathematics, they think about the kinds of, they think about numbers and dollars, and there's definitely a lot more to mathematics than just being able to add and subtract dollars together. But in terms of the when am I ever going to use this question, there's no better way to talk about the importance of mathematics than when it comes to your household bills. You may be lucky enough to have never dealt with a bill before, but once you leave high school, you definitely will be looking at some bills. And it's really important to know what every part of your bill means, because without that, sorry, I've just got a Q&A, and someone said that they can't find New South Wales Maths Standard Year 11 for 2020, and there's only 2019. So would you be able to, just in the Q&A section, could you send me another question and let me know what your school is, what your school name is? I'll see if I can fix that up for you now. Sorry about the delay. I just want to make sure everyone can see what I can see. Someone else joining through Westpac. Okay, give me a second. Would you be able to send me one more Q&A and just tell me what your email address is that you signed up through Westpac? Okay, so while that's going on, okay, I got your email. Sorry, everybody. I'll just make sure that this is as quick as possible. Okay, I found your account. All right. Okay, I'll see what I can do, but I'm going to push on for now. I've asked one of my colleagues to look into this, and I'll let you know as soon as I know. Okay, let's get into it. So as I was saying, household bills are important because each week or each month or each quarter or each year, you'll be getting billed for things. There's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to want and need your money. And it might not seem like a lot, but there are a few things you can do to change the way that your money is taken out of your account that can make a huge impact in the long term. Something that we'll be looking at both this week and next week is how a small amount of money can become a really big amount of money given time. And that can be both a good thing in terms of investments, but it can also be a bad thing if it's something like debt. So when it comes to your household bills, the best thing to do is to think of it like a detective story. There's a whole bunch of information that's going to be on that bill, and we're going to be asking some questions, and we have to try and match up all the information from the numbers and the words and the terminology. It can be very confusing, and sometimes it's deliberately confusing to try and make sure that you understand exactly why people are charging the money that they're charging you. Okay, so to start with, the important things, so as it says in the lesson, and I'm going to be going through the lesson one point at a time, and I'm going to see if how much of this we can cover in our hour together. So as it says here, we've got to make sure that we're not being overcharged. We also might have different options depending on how we're using whatever the service happens to be. We might be able to switch to a cheaper plan. And ultimately, we want to make those informed decisions. So, first of all, we're going to be talking about water and energy usage. In your home somewhere, or if you live in an apartment block, somewhere in your apartment block, there will be a range of meters that look super old-timey. They might look like this with little dials on them, or more advanced ones might be computerized, but a lot of them are still like this very old type. And believe it or not, every 3 months, someone from the energy or water company will come to your house and read the numbers off these dials. If you ever find this in your house, you might notice that it's sort of making a little clicking noise, or if it's electronic, it'll be slowly going up. And that's the energy in your house that's running your refrigerator, running your computer. Slowly, slowly, these numbers tick up. And every 3 months, someone comes along and checks that number. They have your previous meter reading on their sheet. And so the difference between what it was 3 months ago and what it is when they come and check it, that's how much it's ticked up, and that's how much you're going to get charged. Sometimes though, and this is important for everyone to know about water and energy usage, is that sometimes they don't come out to your property. Sometimes they just estimate. And if the estimate doesn't match what's on your meter reading, you might have been overcharged or undercharged. So the next thing to mention is the energy is given in units that are called kilowatt hours. Watt is a unit of energy. Hours, we know what hours are. And kilowatt is like kilogram. It's 1,000 watts. But for our purposes, we can just treat kilowatt hours as the thing that energy is measured in. And water usage is measured in liters. So let's take a look at a bill. This is a bill that someone, Mrs. A Sample, gets. She lives at 1 Sample Avenue in Sampletown. And a lot of numbers here. We have numbers for here, 131,100. Oh no, that's a phone number. And other numbers, dollar numbers. And it's quite easy for your eyes to sort of glaze over and go, oh, okay, total amount due $203.38. I guess I got to pay $203.38, and then you pay it, and then you move on with your life. That is definitely something that you can do. But sometimes you might need to save. Sometimes, what if they're overcharging you by $20? How do you figure that out? How is this number calculated? These are the kinds of critical thinking questions that we really need to apply whenever we're looking at any kind of bill that's being sent to us. So Let's answer the questions that have been given to us in this example. And if you're looking at 9.01 in the Standard 11 textbook, you can see this question as well. So it starts off pretty easy. What is the total amount due? And that's usually included at the bottom of the bill. Easy. What was the amount due on the previous water bill? So now we need to take a look through the entire bill and see if we can find anything about the last bill. And it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. Meter number, last reading, last bill, last bill. There we go. That was the amount due on the previous water bill, $259.84. Why do they include the last amount? And that's because sometimes it says not only how much you were billed last time, but also how much you paid. So if Mrs. A sample was a good citizen and paid it all off, and that's why the balance is 0. If, however, let's say you didn't pay this bill at all, then the payments would read 0 and the balance would read $259.84. So you still owe $259.84. And then the amount due, the total amount due, would be the sum of the amount you didn't pay last time plus the amount you've got to pay this time. So this number can change depending on how much you paid. Okay, next one, how much water was consumed? Once again, we're like a detective going through the bill, seeing if we can find anything about consumption. Here, meter reading, this reading, last reading. They've done it for us. So notice that the meter reading said 1,425 and the last reading was 1,405. So the difference between the last reading and this reading is 20, and that's how much was used. What's the water usage charge? Well, there's a bunch of different charges here. Let's see what each of them are for. There's one for water service. There's one for wastewater service, and then there's usage water. Okay, usage, great. $45.52. So what does that mean? That the usage is $45.52? Well, it means that even if you used 0 water, you didn't turn the tap on once in 3 months, you would still get charged all of this money because these are the fixed charges. Lots and lots of services. Maybe it might be your internet or your mobile phone or something like that. It's a fixed charge, no matter whether or not you use it. If you go away on holiday for 3 months, that's it. What about people who paid for a gym membership and now they can't leave their house? Well, if you're paying a fixed charge, you're still getting charged for that week after week, month after month, whether or not you use it. So actually, out of this total amount due, $203, only $45.52 is for the actual water usage. The rest is for just the privilege of being able to use water. What's the price of water per kiloliter? So kiloliter, that seems like a little bit of a new term, but kiloliter is like kilowatt is like kilogram. It just means 1,000. And as we're looking through the bill, when we're looking at the usage charges, it tells us that not only is the consumption 20, so that's why it's 20 kiloliters, and then this gives us the usage charge per kiloliter. So this is actually pretty cheap. Water, not very expensive. 1,000 liters costs you $2.27, or 28 cents, I suppose, if you round up. Think about that next time you buy a bottle of bottled water. You can buy 1,000 liters of tap water for $2.28. How many liters of waters were used on an average day? On average per day? Okay, a few things to do here. This is when it starts to get a little bit interesting, when the question's starting to think a little bit more in depth. So first of all, we need to figure out how many days the period was over. And then we have to divide that by how many liters were actually used. So let's go back to this bill and let's see if there are any dates around. So we've got the address, numbers, account details, money, 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 please pay by this date. Okay, I guess we'll do that. And then here we go. meter reading period, 20th of October to 22nd of January. How many days is that? Okay, to calculate this, we're going to have to add it up. So on your computer, you should have a calendar function. So I'm just going to open mine up. And the number of days between the 20th of October and the 22nd of January is the same no matter what year it is. The only time we might have to think about actual years is if it goes over February and it might have a leap year. So I'm just going to go back to October, and October 20th. How many days are there in October? Well, there's 1 plus a full week of 7 plus another 4. So 1 plus 4 plus 7 is 12 days in October. So I'm just going to put this up here, 12 days in October. Okay, so then we need to count up the number of days in November. So 30 days half November and all that. And then 30 days half November, April, June, and the other one. So December's not one of them. 30 days half September, April, June, and November. Whatever, they all rhyme. Okay, 30 for November, 31 for December. And then we've got 22 days for January. So we add all of these up. 2 and 1 and 2 is 5. No carrying. 1 and 3 and 3 and 2 is 9. So this is 95 days of usage that we've been charged for. We calculate this so that we can figure out the daily usage. So we need to divide the usage by the number of days. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just check the question again. It says how many liters of water we used. And remember when we looked at how much we used, it said 20 kiloliters. Oh, someone just pointed out to me that it says on the bill 95 days. There you go, you see? Detective work. Far better detective work from Kelly than from me. Here I was opening up a calendar and counting it up manually when it says right there on the bill. Okay, well, it was a learning adventure for us, a learning adventure for addition. Cool. So yeah, 95 days, great. So the next point though is that because we're asking for liters of water, we can't just do 20 divided by 95. We need to do 20,000 divided by 95. And in order to do 20,000 divided by 95, I'm going to use old mate Google. Let me just erase all of this. Go get all of this. We remember 95. Well, we don't need to remember. It's written right there. Use old mate Google, and let's do 20,000 divided by 95. This is going to tell us how much on average this person used in a day. 210 liters. You might think that's a lot, but think about all the different things that showers are used for. Think about how many liters might fit in a bath, or how much water it takes to use a shower, and how many times you turn the tap on washing your hands. If you collected all of that in a big bucket, it'd be a lot of water. Final question. If the price of water rises by 10%, calculate the new price per kiloliter. Okay, so we've got the price per kiloliter. That was our answer from part E. That's this one here. So if the price rises by 10%, then what is the price going to be? To increase something by 10%, I'm first going to ask a question. How do you increase something by 0%? Seems a little strange, but what we have here is we've got 2.27. Oh, why am I using my mouse? I've got a pen and everything. Okay, I'm just gonna get my pen out. Eraser, there we go. It'll look much nicer if I'm using my pen. Okay, so, yep, this one. So, we have a 10% rise. So we take our 2.276 and we're going to add 10%. So to add 10%, we could find 10%, but instead, I'm going to multiply it by 100 and let me undo that. 110%. If I just multiplied it by 100%, 2.276 times 100% is just 2.276 times 1. If I times something by 110%, that's 10% more than 100%. And once again, old mate Google to the rescue. I'm going to go across to here and I'm going to do 2.276. I'm going to use the asterisk symbol. It's Shift 8 to do a times 110%. And there's my new answer, 2.5036. I'm going to calculate it a different way. Let's say you didn't know this little trick to multiply it by 110%. Well, what I can do is I can find out what 10% is by multiplying it by 10%. 10% of 2.276 is 0.2276. And if I take my answer and add, this is 10%, and it's a 10% increase, so I add it to the original 2.276, and then I get the same answer as before. So I think this shortcut is really great, but if you ever get stuck, just remember, if you want to increase by something, if you want to increase something by 10%, find 10% and add it back to the original. Okay, so this particular question is in the lesson, and if you want, you can go through the lesson yourself and do this question and the other questions in there. But in the interest of, I reckon the best thing to do is to have a go at the kinds of questions that you'll be looking at in this lesson, all to do with these bills. I actually wanted to move on to the next section, and there are a couple of other questions in the lesson that are about reading bills. What I wanted to do was take a look at this next section where we're talking about the difference between what is called the fixed rate and the variable rate. This is going to come up when we talk about stamp duty and cars in a little bit. It also comes up in all walks of life, from the amount of taxes you pay, the amount of Centrelink assistance you might be eligible for. It's what is called, in this context, a block tariff. Okay, so let's take a look at this when we're being charged for energy. Now notice that you might remember the kilowatt hour when we were talking about energy, but in this particular context, we're talking about natural gas. And natural gas has a different unit. It's called megajoule. So megajoule, mega is just one step up from kilo. So a megajoule is 1,000,000 joules, whereas a kilowatt hour is 1,000 kilowatt hours. But you'll notice that there is two different ways that you might be billed. This first one is the one that I want to focus in on. It says that the amount used, well, the first 20,500 megajoules that you use, you get charged at this rate. If you use more than that, the extra gets charged at a different rate. And then if you go past both of these limits, you're going to be charged a different rate still. So how are we going to figure out, if we can figure out how much we use, how much are we going to get charged? How much we're charged depends on all of these different brackets. If you ever hear the phrase tax bracket, that's similar to what's going on here. And being able to understand the fundamentals of this sort of a setup is going to be really important. So I'm going to take a look down here So this one's about peak usage, which is slightly different. So instead, I'm going to head over into the questions and find a good question on this topic. Okay. Some more bills. More bills. Here we go. So let's do this question. So I'm going to try this out, but I'll just remind everyone, if you go into the textbook question section and try the question, it's not going to count for your mastery. So let's take a look at this question. We'll jump in. You'll also know if you're not going to get credit for a question in Mathspace if it says preview workout. Okay, so this is the kind of setup that I was talking about, where there's a first and there's a next, and there's also this thing called a supply fee. How are we going to figure this all out? So let's start by answering the first question. Marge uses exactly 6,000 megajoules in January. Good on you, Marge. So how do we figure out how much she's going to get charged? So let's take a look at the charges. The first 6,000 megajoules that Marge uses has this rate. And since she only used 6,000 megajoules, there's no need for us to look at this next column because she didn't use more than 6,000. But the charges here are $0.0262 per megajoule. So you get 1,000,000 joules for about 3 cents. Bargain. Okay, so how are we going to do this question? Well, we just need to multiply the amount that she used by the charges. So let's do that first. Once again, we'll get old mate Google up. We do 6,000 times the charge was 0.0262. 0.0262. 157.2. So let's just throw in 157.2 without thinking. And let's get upset that Mathspace didn't. Okay, what have I missed? What have I missed? If you can see it. So it's true that we don't have to worry about this row, but it says here a supply fee of $60. This is similar to the bill that we were looking at before, where you had to pay like more than $150 just to have water connected. It's the same idea. You're getting charged, Marge is getting charged $157.20 for the amount of gas that she uses, but she's also getting charged $60 just to be connected. There we go, much better. So now we add these together, 15 plus 6 is 21, and we're away. Okay. In February, March uses this much more than she did in January. By how much does her total monthly cost increase? Okay, we could do the same sort of calculation that we did before, but we're going to be careful this time. When we're talking about an increase, we're talking about what's going to be different about this bill than the last bill. Well, in the next bill where she uses this much more, she's going to get charged for the first 6,000 in exactly the same way that she was charged before. And she's going to get charged $60 just like she was charged before. The difference is going to be this next amount that is at a cheaper rate. So how much more is she going to get charged? Only this row is what's changing. So the next 13,500, this many dollars, let's ask Google again, what is 13,500? And we've also got to change the rate. So the rate is now 0.0164. 0164. 221.4. So we put that in here, 221.40, enter. Okay. So how much does she have to pay in total? The total cost is the sum of these two, because this was how much more she was charged. So we add them up and send it in, and we'll move on to the next question. What I'm going to do next, though, is I'm going to take a look at a question that is a very similar question to this, where it's got different brackets with different rates, but it's going to be in a slightly different application. So I'm actually going to go through to this purchasing a car section and look at some of the questions in here. So there's some talk about interest. I think I'll leave a lot of the discussion about interest until next time. I actually want to try this question out. This is the kind of confusing setup that, as I said, applies not only to gas prices and gas bills, but it also applies to what is called stamp duty in a car. It applies to tax. It applies to all sorts of things. So what's going on here? Let's start with what even is stamp duty. If you don't know what stamp duty is, in the lesson for 9.02, it will tell you what it is, but what stamp duty is in the name. It's how much you pay someone to stamp a form. So, okay, we were talking before about how it costs like $2.20 for 1,000 liters of water. How much do you reckon it's going to be to get someone to stamp a form? It's actually thousands of dollars. And it's a way for the government to make money when people buy cars. It's a tax, just like the government might tax your income or tax the goods and services you buy. There's a tax that's put on new purchases of cars, and it can actually be quite expensive. It's right here at the top of the lesson. It's a state government tax on new and used car purchases. If we walk a little bit further down, it's going to show us in the lesson what stamp duty looks like. And you'll notice that it has a similar bracket setup as the gas prices did. So if your vehicle is $45,000 or less, then you've got to pay $3 for every dollar. That's 3% of the value of the car. And $3 in every $100 adds up to a lot of money when there's that much money. And if your car, if you are in, the Lambo crew and you are paying more than $45,000 for a car, then it's going to go up to $5 for every $100. So 5% you have to pay on top of what you paid. So if you saved up that $80,000 for a used Lamborghini or whatever, then you also have to pay a bunch of money on top as a tax. So let's take a look at actually using this in practice. One of the things you'll notice is we've got this $3 for every $100 or part thereof. And then we go into the question and it says, it's written in a different way. It says 3% of the car's market value up to $45,000 plus 5% of the car's market value that exceeds $45,000. Having lots of different ways to express the same thing is something that we like usually in English. We want to be able to express ourselves, but it can get a little confusing when it comes to mathematics. And sometimes that's a little bit hard to untangle. So let's just do it one step at a time, and maybe we'll see how this formulation here is the same as this formulation, and how this formulation is the same as what it was over here in the natural gas setting. So let's try it out. So what's the stamp duty on a car worth $16,000? So the first question to ask whenever we're doing something like this is, are we in the bottom bracket or are we in the top bracket? Okay, So $16,000 is less than $45,000. So the stamp duty is going to only this first part is going to be relevant because the car's market value does not exceed $45,000. So the stamp duty is 3% of this. What is 3% of this? Once again, we can use our calculator or Google, and we can say, what's the price of the car again? $16,000. $16,000. And remember that times is that asterisk symbol, or you can click around the buttons if you already have the calculator loaded, or use whatever calculator you like. $16,000 times 3%. And that will tell us what 3% of $16,000 is. We'll take a look at some percentages and some other tricks you can do with percentages. If you can do it manually in your head or start thinking about it, it'll make things a little bit faster. But for the moment, anyone working on a bill should be using a calculator rather than, accidentally making a mistake. So $480, great. What about $55,000? This is the first time that we're going across into that second threshold. This is like Marge in February, where she suddenly used more gas and there was a different rate. So how do we work this out? Let's read it very carefully. It says 3% of the car's market value up to $45,000 plus blah, 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 blah. So let's figure out this first bit. 3% of the car's market value up to $45,000. So what's 3% of $45,000? Let's do that again. $45,000 times 3%. $1,350. So I'm going to write over here, I'm just going to use the sketch pad here. So I've got $45,000, 45,000. And then it gets me a stamp duty of 13. Oh, great, 3 there, $1,350. So what is left over? It says plus 5% of the value that exceeds 45,000. So how much do I need to get up to 55K? Well, 45,000 plus what makes 55,000? It's 10,000. I'm just going to draw a little table here. 1, 2. And so now we need to find 5% of 1,000. Well, we could get our calculator out again, but if we've got 1,000, then 1% of 1,000 is 10, and 5% of 1,000 is going to be 50. Oh, but it's not 1,000, is it? It's 10,000. Whoops. Well, the nice thing about these nice round numbers, what's 5% of 10,000? Well, I just add an extra 0 on there. Okay. So what's happening here is that this section gets a 3% and this extra section gets 5%. And so if I add them up, 1,350 plus 500. Excellent. So there is.
So now we run the top 74,000. So this equation, I believe we're saying 7 versus $55,000. But let's
Could someone send a message if they can hear me in my microphone? Okay, good. Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Cool, cool, cool. So I'll just backtrack a little bit. I don't know how much was lost here, but what's going to be different and what's going to be the same when we have a slightly more expensive car, $74,000. Nice car. So the thing that's going to be the same is this first column here. $45,000 is going to get the first $45,000. We're still going to get charged $1,350 for that. What's going to change is the amount in excess. So the first thing we want to do is find out what this new excess is. How much are we in this 5% range? So once again, we're going to get Google out. We're going to do calculator. So it's a $74,000 car. And we're going to minus that $45,000 that we already accounted for in the previous calculation. That's $29,000 that's going to be in this zone here. So I'm just going to quickly do the eraser here. So instead of a 10, this is going to become 29. So this is the part that gets 3%, but now because it's more expensive, it's going to be a bigger number up here that gets the 5% whack. All right, and then let's get rid of this because that was the old calculation. So now we're going to find 5% of this excess to satisfy this second part. So we're just going to take our answer and times it by 5%. Thanks, Google, $1,450. So like I said, you saved up $74,000 and you got yourself a nice car. And then someone says, you know what? We're going to tax you on top. $1,350 plus $1,450. And then we add those together. $1,350 plus $1,450 is $2,800. And we're away. Just wait until you hear about stamp duties for houses as well. So when you buy this car, you're actually going to have to save up $76,800 to get it all together. This bracket way of thinking about things is something that I'm going to be discussing next week, because a lot of people get paid like this, a lot of people get taxed like this, and it's important for us to be able to break this down and think in these sorts of terms. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. If anyone does have any questions they'd like to ask, then please ask now. I'll just show you a little bit about what I think you could do next and what I will be doing next week. So in terms of what you could do next, I'm going to switch across to my student account again, if I can find it, or too many tabs. Yeah, I think I lost it. I lost my student tab. Oh well. So from the students page, I reckon the best thing to do is to go into the topics page and see how much of 9.01 and 9.02 you can do. If you start struggling with the interest, we'll be covering that next week. But at the very least, have a go at 9.01 and see how many of those bills you can successfully interpret, and make sure you don't make the same mistake I did. And next week, we're going to be talking a little bit more about cars and the cost of fuel on road running costs, but we'll also be talking a little bit about income and taxation. The other thing I'll mention is that after next week, so this week and next week are intended to be a bit of a review or an overview, just little bits here and there. After next week, when school goes back for everyone, if you're in Victoria, I know you're already back at school, but after that, I'm actually going to be approaching it as if you've never heard of it before. and we're going to be going much slower and much more carefully through each of the concepts. But if you do have any feedback, please let us know. And I can't see any questions in the chat, which is great. I think that we will be sending out a feedback survey. So if you do get that, please let us know. Unless any other questions come through, I'm just going to see about the people who were talking about Westpac, if anything's come through. Okay, so I've got an answer from someone about anyone who signed up to Mathspace for Westpac, through Westpac. Our Westpac sponsorship is expiring very soon. You can get everything in Mathspace, including the 2020 editions, through a homeschool account. And to find out about Mathspace and the homeschooling account, then just go to mathspace.co and the information will all be there. So if you don't have Mathspace through a school, if you got it through Westpac or got it privately, then go to our website and check out the Mathspace for homeschooling. You don't actually have to be a homeschool kid to buy it for homeschooling. You can just get it if you want to use Mathspace, and it'll just be your parents paying for it rather than the school. Okay, well, thank you very much. As before, all of the recordings are going to be available on mathspace.co/ if you go to mathspace.co or mathspace.com.au, you'll be able to see all the Academy work there and see all the recordings. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to stop my share and I will see you all next week.